Okay, well, the wheel has turned again. And I suppose in many ways I come to the most difficult phase of all in terms of its nature, its chemistry, and its impact. I was smiling to myself because the only thing that I could think of in my general introduction to Lakshmi was a song that was, written in the 1920s somewhere in Tennessee, Alabama, something like that, southern states. It's called Money Honey. And one of my favorite lyrics in that song is, "Why should I pay for 5 when only 3 look like me?" Which sort of rhymes with Lakshmi, but anyway. We come to the place of lucre. We come to the thing that makes civilization work, after all. And it's one of the most fascinating things to understand about our nature, because we have politicized all kinds of concepts of materialism. And yet materialism in and of itself is simply an extension of the demands of being a bioform. But civilization isn't the same as initiation. That is, civilization isn't built on a single life. It can't be. Civilization is generational. And we understand that best by looking back at the monarchical history of humanity, that is, rulers whose power to control societies was something that was passed along by the bloodline, genetically, from, as it was in the patriarchy, from father to son. Generations and generations and generations and generations of this movement through specific bloodlines. How is that possible? One of the things to understand about the nature of civilization is that civilization is based on, well, if I can be trite, it's based on banking, because that's really what it's all about. You see, it's not enough. We're not mammals, so it's not enough to have a mate that is going to do its best to kill enough for you and defend you. Humanity has a different quality, that is the ability to be able to store information and to be able to move progress at an extraordinary rate because of that gift, a gift of our self-reflected consciousness. But when we're talking about our own blood, when we're talking about giving birth to a child, it is something that every mother knows deep, 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 deep in their soul, that the moment that they have that life growing within them, that they have to do everything in their power to be able to provide that life with the best opportunity that it can give it. And that best opportunity is about material. And as we progress, the material becomes more complex. Material becomes many things. Material becomes property. Material becomes wealth. Material becomes, diamonds and dollar bills and, on and on and on and on as we move along in the movie. But it's something to understand about this great work that takes place here. I mean, Lakshmi has this is a great goddess of wealth, and her name is attached to so many things in the Hindu Brahmin tradition. This quality masks something much, much more profound. That is, there was a statistical analysis. It was an American one. regarding class and the ability to be able to move from one class to another. That is, how easy is it for the underclass to become working class, to become middle class, to become upper middle class, to become wealthy? All of these various stages in material capitalist hierarchies. And they did this survey, and of course, one of the things that is, just an obvious, and yet, we don't really dig underneath and look at that carefully. That is, if you're born into the upper classes, chances are you're never going to leave it. Chances are you're never going to leave it, and you're never going to leave it because there is wealth. And what the wealth does is that it guarantees you a better education, better health care, better connections, better schools, better possibilities, all of those things, and it's built in. And not only is it built in because of the wealth, but the wealth itself is a byproduct of a cultural standard, an expectation. A child born into one of these families, it is assumed that they are going to be educated, that they're going to go to university, that they're going to do this or that. You're going to grow up to be a little doctor, whatever the case may be. If you're born into the underclass, in some American cities, there are 3 generations of people who have never had real work. You're born into the underclass, the chance of leaving it is extraordinary. It's absolutely extraordinary. It's why you see in every place in the world where you look at athletics, you see the disproportionate representation of the underclass, and they're one of the few places where they can break out. And all of this has to do with wealth. All of it. It's the thing that makes a difference in a life. Is whether or not, you're secure when you're growing up. What is your culture as you're growing up? All of those things. And it doesn't come from nowhere. It's not like, it's right here in this really extraordinary chemistry. Well, I can get it to open up. There it is. You can see to begin with that we have actually three different varieties, if you will, in this one face. In other words, representation from 3 codons in this one face. So it is a very, very complex face. But it also says something else. This very complexity is directly related to how significant this influence is. Because, of course, through chemical continuity, the information is not simply information that is going to pass through at a general sense, but it's also going to pass through in terms of the codon representation. It is very complex, and it is, in essence, one of the fundamental ingredients for our process. It's money. And in looking at that, we begin here. Because here is where, the story begins. And by the way, I finally remembered this time to get my lettering right, so the lettering is all correct. The 45th gain. There are so many things that can be said about the 45th gate, but I guess the thing that really puts the 45th gate in perspective is that it is the only expression of the Wa. And the Wa is the largest of the transpersonal auras. A Wa fundamentally is made up of 3 pentas and an alpha. 16 beings form a Wa. It is the ancient family complex. It is the beginning of the gene pool. It is one of the foundations of building a gene pool. And the 45th gate is its expression. Now, the Wa is the way in which the program, and by the way, I put it up in the home study for any of you that ever get curious about it. The Wa is really the most extraordinary example that I know of the way in which the program impacts us. And the Wa itself, given that this is, the largest and most complex aura system on the planet, that its expression and its only expression is the 45th gate. And when we talk about the political organization of humanity, that political organization of humanity begins with the 45th gate. The 45th gate is the expression of the ego circuit. It is the expression of the tribe. That it is the one way we get the tribe to the throat. And the channel 4521, the channel of materialism, the name that the voice gave me, that is, the voice said was its ancient name, is the money line. And the 45 is this deep, deep material theme in life. Deep material theme. This is the gathering together, and it's more than just the gathering together. I mean, it's the head of the tribe. It is the empress. It is the emperor. It is the czar and the czarina. It's the pharaohs. It's king and queen. It carries with it the most ancient rulership of the tribe. And one of the things that it expresses is that gathering together is a fundamental obligation of humanity. If you don't gather, you don't build your civilization. And think about what the 45 is in a political sense. Let's think about it, for example, as king or queen. The 45 in and of itself doesn't really do anything. I mean, it's not like they're particularly active. They may have to be in times of, if you go back far enough, in times of war or times of building a kingdom. But once the hereditary process is established, the actual running of whatever it is, the kingdom, is going to be accomplished by the 21. That's very different, as we have seen. And the 21 is, the active enforcement, if you will, of tribal regulation and tribal rules and tribal conformity. But it also does something else. It demands payment. We call it taxes. Wealth isn't just about wealth for the individual or wealth for the tribe, but wealth for the state. And you see, if the state cannot collect enough taxes, then there is no way that the services of the society are going to improve. If they don't collect enough taxes, there are not going to be very many schools, and they're not going to be well maintained, and teachers are going to be underpaid, if paid at all. Taxes have to be collected in order to provide for the betterment of society. The 45th gate is a great gate of education. Education. And that education is something that must be paid for and instilled in the young. And it is a responsibility of the material rulers to provide for not simply education, but services. Better roads, better sewers, better protection, better police, better educators, blah, 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 on and on. It's all here. It's all here. And it is a wonderful connection, at least for me and all the things that I have seen in this knowledge over 20 years. I love this relationship between the 45 and the 16 and Sistine. Most people, when they think about the 16th gate, they immediately think about the, talent. It's the channel of talent, the depth of the 48, the skills of the 16. But it's not really what makes the 16 so incredible. And it's not just simply an expression that talent costs. If you want to train your kids to be a dancer, a musician, whatever it is, talent is always going to cost money, and talent has to be invested in. And it's something that I think is really very beautiful about this relationship. But the thing that's so interesting for me about the 16th gate is the 16th gate is about identification. Identification. This is, we're dealing with very, very, very powerful gates here. I don't know if you really grasp how powerful they are. The 45 is a throat gate that goes direct to the ego. The 35 is a throat gate, goes direct to the solar plex. The 12 direct to the solar plex. Only the 16 is truly without, it's a projected element when it gets to the 48. It's something to understand how powerful this space is, how it influences our whole social domain, what we see through the 12 and the 35, how it influences our whole experiential way. Guess what? Experience is about gain. Gain. The journey is always a journey that has a material, ulterior motive. It's there. It's always there underneath. Always. And boy, if you ever want to see crisis, see what happens to anyone when they have nothing. Progress. Progress costs money. Time, material, energy. You cannot do that without identification. We are locked into the chemistry of being identified with materialism. Do you see it? It's so perfect. From the point of view of the organization of the program, wow, totally identified with gathering, totally identified with the need to invest in the future. And you invest in the future, you can only do that if you have the resources, and you can only have the resources if everyone is doing something that produces resources. The whole work ethic. And it all goes back to the mother and the child. That child's got to be fed. That child's got to be clothed. It has to be protected. It needs to be prepared for the world. It needs to be educated. That this is your genetic line. It's your blood. You want to be able to see your grandchildren. You want to get lucky and maybe even see a great-grandchild. And the resources have to be there. They have to be able to survive, to maintain themselves. And so throughout this plane, wherever you are on this planet, doesn't matter, you are stuck with deep genetic identification with the material way of life. Identified with it. And where do we put our talent in this life, folks? Look how much we pay for the talent of others. The $250 million you give to somebody who can kick a ball. The $20 million you give to an actor or an actress to work a couple of months to be filmed in a movie. What we pay for talent. Wow. We are so identified with it. And it's talent that we reward on the job. If you're better at something than somebody else, you're going to get more money. And we're all identified with it. And we cannot escape it. It was the horror of revolutionary Europe over the last, 150 years. From the barriers put up in the cities, in the communes in the 1850s, to the communist revolution. And then you got to see it all over again, what we are. is everything. It controls every life. And we are all identified with it, whether you think you are the proletariat or not. Corruption, jealousy, greed, avarice. It's all here. It's all here. All the things that in civilized intellectual discourses are frowned upon, and the folly of this person or that person, the blame that is there, the jealousy of the hierarchy of material potential. Oh boy, are we ever identified? So deep. There is no escaping it. I mean, there is no escaping it. Every single activation that operates within the tribal domain is touched by this. Our families, our lives, our lands, our cities, communities, countries. This is the voice of the Wa. This is the voice of the program. The deep, deep identification with the material plane. Yeah. Quite something. And it's interesting to think about it in another context. This is one of the Terminators. Like the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, they come in sequels. But anyway, this is one of the Terminators. And the 12th gate has an interesting history. The stream of emoting, the 39, 55, 22, 12. This is one of the most profoundly mutative streams that we have. It is obviously mutated from just a basic understanding of individual circuitry in the design. But more than that, it has a history of mutation and a future of mutation. I mean, the future being in the 55th gate and the mutation that's taking place there for 2027. But of course, the 12th gate was part of an earlier mutation, one that had extraordinary impact on human life. That is the mutation of the larynx. If you look at our closest simian relatives, chimpanzees, what you get to see is that they can breathe and drink at the same time. A newborn baby can breathe and drink at the same time. That is, it can nurse at its mother's breast, and at the same time it can breathe through its nose, and at some point that's no longer possible. The mutation kicks in, and that's the moment that babies, for example, start spitting up, and they're getting air in the food they're taking in. This transformation is an opening up of the larynx, and it actually allows us to be able to modulate sound in a myriad way, so that we have the possibility of what we call language. The mutation of the 12th gate was the beginning of language, and not simply the ability to be able to communicate, but the ability to be able to socially communicate and change others. And change others. I'll say that again. And change others. Now, I wonder if you know where I'm going. I really do. There's an old joke that the first profession was prostitution, which isn't a very nice joke. But in fact, there is a joke that goes along with that says, no, in fact, the first profession was sales, marketing. This is where it all began. I mean, this is the root of salesmanship. You know, if you look in the material plane, where you see that is in the 26th gate. That is, this 26th gate, in terms of its ego power, has this ability to be, forcefully powerful in trying to get information across channel of transmission. Hold on a second, folks. Excuse me, please. Sorry about that. There's no one in my house today, and I just had an unexpected arrival. I may have to leave you again for a minute or so. But let me get back to the 12th gate. We are really talking about the origins of the ability to be able to, smooth talk people, get them to change their minds, get them to invest in things. But more than that, it is a creative expression as well, a way of influencing others. But it's deeply mutative. I mean, it's something to understand about the channel of a social being, is how powerful it is in its ability to mutate the right listener. And all of this ultimately is connected to the material plane. And it is about, in many ways, knowing how and knowing who to invest in. Because it's also much a part of it. So, this terminator, this gate of caution. And again, how powerful it is. It opens up to the solar plex system after all. This is a manifesting channel. And that we can see so clearly that everything about the nature of the material life is so deeply, deeply influenced by the emotional system. How connected they become to each other. How the material principle and emotionality grind against each other. I mean, they do. So much of the rage and think about it. You've got these two channels that go directly down to the solar plex system. Now, both of them are emotional manifesting channels, which means both of them carry a great deal of anger, potential anger. How much anger the identification with the material plane brings in this life. Wow! I mean, this is where the real hierarchy of life is established. Hold on a second. I'll be back. I have to get this guy's design. He's a carpenter fixing something here. He always tells me, I'll come tomorrow, but I'm not sure. And then he comes 4 days later. Anyway, that's my life. Where was I? Sorry for that. There are so many different ways that one can look at the 12th gate, and one has to be very careful with what I'm telling you. But I want you to understand something about the fact that you cannot, you have to be able to mutate in order to be able to transform material possibilities. And they are inherently social. That is, they're inherently social. I mean, when you think to the way in which we have developed materially, one of the most common things, for example, is business partnerships, people who work together to create things. This is something that is so important to grasp about the social dynamic of materialism. That this carries its social dynamic. It carries its mutative quality. The mutative quality that says, look, for example, the 1222 has a relationship to mammals. It is a way in which we befriend them. It's a way in which we take advantage of them. Here is the ability to be able to organize with others, all kinds of material directions that can change life. agriculture, the advent of agriculture, the use of writing, the way to take advantage of information. I mean, one of the great jokes for me about writing that originated in Mesopotamia is that the first written things were accounts. I mean, they were accounts. I mean, we talk about, like the ancient city of Ur, which was, the really one of the true birthing places of Western civilization. This is where writing began. It was nothing but accounts. They had to figure out how to make sure that, everybody got what was correct, and exchanges for goods, for grain, and all these things, and they had to keep records. I mean, they just did. It is its openness to the emotional system that creates so much dilemma on the planet. I mean, and you can see it's not directly the cysteine. First of all, it's coming from the 12. When you think about terminators, by the way, terminators are really punctuation marks. Like the punctuation at the end of a sentence. It could be a period, or, could be a comma, you're going somewhere else. It could be a question mark. This is really the question mark. It's a question mark. When you think about the 12th gate as chemistry, if you think about, for example, the 41st gate, which is interesting because it is a singularity, the 41, like the 35, as you'll see. I got lost there, went off to singularities. Sorry, I'm quite disturbed by this going up and down my stairs here. Anyway, okay, let me get back to where I'm going. The emotionality and the question mark. Yes, thank you. I'll put it there, and everything will be better. There is a question. It is an essential question. It's the question of whether or not you're going to have enough. I was talking about the 41st gate. The 41st gate is the other side of the stream to the 35. And for many, many years, when I was first describing this stream, the 41, the 30, the 36, 35, I talked about how the 41 and the 35 were like the gauges on your car for fuel. The 41 says empty and we need to be filled up, and the 35 says we're full. This movement from, a desire, the root of a desire, to its fulfillment, that movement. What is the question? The question is, will I be able to have enough material? I mean, will I be able to make it? At some point, everybody feels this question deep within them. Can I make it on my own? Can I make it in the world? Can I have enough? Will I ever have more than enough? Will I ever be able to enjoy the fruits of my labor? And on and on and on. It is a deep question mark. And it is the question mark, in a sense, that's at the other end of, this process. That is the experiential way. After all, the 41, 30, 36, 35, this is the human experiential way. And that we can see that the whole expression of the experiential way is caught up in this whole material thing. What is progress, after all? Progress, no matter how we look at it, cannot be separated from, material. And these singularities. The 41st gate, the codon is called methionine. And there's only one gate, the 41. And there's only one other gate like this, the other end of the stream. That is here, the 35th gate, tryptophan. And there is only one gate in this codon. So it's a very singular, if you will, a very singular expression. And you can never separate the fact that there is this deep, deep, deep connection that's here. It's what locks them together in this phase. And that ultimately the materialistic themes that are highlighted here, are never ever separate from the others. They can't be. And the 35, standing alone as a singularity at the other end, it tells you how very, very special the 41, 35 really are. I mean, they're incredibly special. They're unique. They really stand alone. They are singular gates, and they are at the root and at the expression of the whole process of what it is to be human. And the goal at the end is to achieve something, to gain. It doesn't mean that every experience is about money. Don't misunderstand that. But every experience somewhere carries with it a goal, a material goal. It just does. It is part of what progress is, and we see it. You're an Asian tiger, and the first thing you do is build 70-story buildings. You invest in vast infrastructure investments, to be able to show progress. And progress is on display. I mean, it is one of the theme words of our society. And in the 16 and in the 35, we have, a beautiful mirror. We have, this wonderful similarity that's there. They are so symmetrical to each other. Both these outside arms stretching out from the throat. I've already talked about the identification of the 16, and the 35 is its other side, and this is expectation. Expectation, identification. Expectation. We expect it. It's built into us. There is this hope, this dream, this possibility. The poor don't want to be poor. The middle class don't want to stay middle class. The upper class just wants to get richer. It's not like anyone's ever satisfied. It's a driving imperative. And it touches us everywhere. Logic, abstract, individual, tribal. Look at these 4 gates. Wow. I mean, they touch everything. Everything with their power. Everything. And this is feeding, our consciousness system. This is what feeds our minds. This is really powerful programming. And it touches everywhere. Everywhere. And not only that, goes beyond in that sense. Identification. To be identified with the material way. To be identified with the value of education. To expect more. Oh, this is the great disappointment of every single 35, 36s. Is that all there is, they say? Is that it? Really? After all this desire and build-up, this is what it is? This is it? This is us. How many human beings suffer and wail, at the fates. At the fates. And then you think about the fates. You see, these are all expressions in the throat. Do you realize how many things are going to pass through these 4 gates? How much information and energy flows through these 4 gates? in what is the global body graph? How much influence this face has on everything? I mean, everything. There's no escaping of it. I mean, just take the 12 and think about it as the 1222 and think about romance. Huh. Money, honey. I mean, romance costs. It all costs. Where do you think the dowry system comes from? All of these things. It's all here. Everything goes through here. Everything. It's why art costs and talent costs and, because whatever flows through these gates is touched with it. This deep, deep, deep impact of Lakshmi that touches everything. There's very little you can look at that in a sense is not affected by this. And that when you look at the 35th gate, this movement from, the 41 down here to the 30, remember the fates, how the fates stand in the way, how the person with all the talent never makes it, how the person who has little talent somehow does. The fates. How the stupid person makes a fortune, how the intelligent one struggles. The fates. And you cannot think about the fates without thinking about money, because it all comes through these gateways. They're like a controlling mechanism in the throat. And because they are so powerful, the 45 to the ego and the 35-36 to the emotions, boy, do they ever stand up. How powerful that money line really is. This is all manifesting power. I mean, manifesting power. Driving, initiating power. This is not waiting for anything. This is the driving force of material life on the material plane, and how it infects every single aspect of our being. Everything. And again, I take you back to the mother and the child, because this is what it's all about. So that there are resources. So each generation can be wealthier than the next, can move up the ladder, can gain, This is the driving force. I mean, every single being in the moment of, attraction to a partner at one level or another, all these dynamics are there. Is this someone who is going to be able to provide? Is this someone that's going to be able to do their share, whatever the expression is? It's an investment. Life is all about an investment. Life is material. There is no escaping it. None whatsoever. I was very fond of, I've had so many sannyasins in my life. And one of the things that I really enjoyed that Osho taught his people was that, make a living, make money. It's okay. It's okay. It is okay. There is nothing else on the material plane but material. I mean, it's one of the most wonderful things about strategy is that you can allow your material intelligence to provide for you. It does a much better job than your mind. And you can see how the mind is so deeply caught up in it all. For the body, it's just natural. It's just natural. But for the mind, there's all this complexity, and of course we know the not-self, not-self mental strategies, the way all of this is warped, because in fact it is only about the truth that we live on the material plane. You're going to have to put up with a bit of that too. That we live on the material plane. It is what we're about. You know? I mean, there's so much resistance. And there's so much poverty. You know, and all of this is simply about vehicles not being able to operate correctly. Yeah, I used to have a standing joke that, you know, if you've got sex problems, or you've got back problems, or you've got money problems, the answer's always the same. Strategy and authority. I mean, it's always the same. And it isn't about, you know, what you gain or how much you gain. It's that it's yours, belongs to you, whatever it is, whatever it's going to be. That the decisions you make, because it's about your geometry in life after all. You know, it's your movement in space that determines whether or not you're going to be all right materially. That movement in space, your alignment, is your strategy. And this is your vehicle. Here, you can see how we are impacted on the mental plane. How infected the personality is with what in fact, such a joke, doesn't belong to it. You know, here's the personality all messed up about money, because this is messy. It's all messy. It's either ego-driven by not-self or emotionally driven by not-self. I mean, come on, you know? Messy, 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 messy. We see what it's done to the mind. We see the impact of materialism. We see how it dominates our thinking. I mean, it dominates everyone's thinking. It's unbelievable. Pick up a newspaper. It is all about money, one way or another. You know, it's about stealing it, losing it, paying for this, not paying for that. You know, how much this war is going to cost, how much this plague is going to cost, how much this recovery is going to cost, and who's going to pay for it. It's all about money. You know, when I was a kid and I would read the sports pages, you would only get scores. You know, now you get, you know, how much and for how long, and that's the story. You know, it's just about money. I mean, you know, it's infected the not-self mind to a point that it is a plague. You know, it can't unload it, can't deal with it. And you have to see where it's coming from. You know, here, deeply, this is the most dominant face of the throat. It's the throat center. It's the center of manifestation. You know, this is it's a metabolism controlling environment. I mean, this is a very, very powerful influence. Every time that somebody speaks with the 12, like me, or the 45, or the 35, or the 16, this voice carries that materialism. It's there in the expression. It's there in its underlying value. It's there. We cannot escape it. You know, it's what civilization is. Civilization is built on material, but more than that, it's built on trying to retain material, hold on to material, not let go of it, pass it on from one generation to a next. You know, wherever you go in the world, you know, every day on this planet, a piece of land is being passed from one generation to the next. It's part of this program. Every child coming into the world is trained to be material. They have to be. They quickly learn about money and costs, and they see their parents either struggle or not, whatever the case may be, but this is the material plane. And every expectation is underlined with materialism. And every identification is rooted in materialism. And every social expression has a material potential. This is Lakshmi. You know? Yes, wealth is a wonderful thing. How strange for a nation like India, where despite all the gloss they get from the largest middle class in the world, they also have 700 million poor. This is Lakshmi's world. This world of being identified. You know, this world of grasping. This world of knowing that if you get educated, you got a shot. This world that teaches you to expect, identify. You know? This is the material world. It's very ancient, by the way. It's always interesting to think about the movement of everything, because I talk a lot about movement. There's a star up here. It's called Vega. It's Vega. And it's approximately around the 54th hexagram in Capricorn. And basically, sort of, this is the direction that our solar system is taking in terms of the galaxy as a whole. So it is a direction that we're moving in. So in that sense, you know, as you move towards Capricorn, in that sense, you're moving towards the future. It's future direction. So you're going to have much more future thinkers in that sense. And moving away from Cancer, you know, moving away from, well, it's down here, actually. I got all those lines really bad there, folks. It's supposed to be like this. But anyway, moving away from Cancer is moving away from the old. And, you know, the quarter of civilization, you know, this throat-dominated quarter, is very much the past, in a sense. I mean, it is something that we are, in essence, leaving behind, but still, it is a main influence on our nature. Deep influence on our nature. Of all the faces that we are going to look at, of all of them, please understand, no single face impacts us more profoundly than this face. None. None. You know, this is our world. It's our world. It's what our world is built on. It's the way everything works, whether we like it or not, by the way, because it doesn't really matter. What really matters is that we don't get caught in the psychological disease of money. I've been very graced in this life. I was raised with wealth. And like Buddha, in a way, I gave it all up. And it was a fascinating process to have nothing. And I had nothing for a long time. Correctness is a very beautiful thing. Whatever you need is there when you're correct. You just have to be able to see it, but it's there. And all of the things that occupied my mind when I was caught in the material plane, I realized how they basically had destroyed my life. That is, there was no me in all of that. There was simply, all of these forces that impinge on us, particularly in the West, in terms of survival and the limitations of how much material we have and all of these things. I've learned to see that wealth in and of itself isn't the point. In the sense that if you're correct, you get precisely what is required for you. What suits your role, your design, whatever it is what you get. Nothing more, nothing else. And this is about your body living your material life for you. That's what it's all about. It's not about your mind. Because you can see that your mind doesn't have a chance. It's got all these expectations. It's identified with this thing or that thing. It's got to have its materialism. The 45th gate says, I have or I don't have. You know? This is, I have or I don't have. No, it's only your body that can move you correctly through the material plane and give you the gain that is correct for you. I mean, it's one of my joys in doing BG5, business analysis. Everybody, you can see, everybody has a way to operate correctly on the material plane. Everybody has a way. Everyone. You know, but it's very difficult to get away from the identifications and expectations that are there. They're so ingrained in us genetically. You know, they fill our personality consciousness with these themes. They just do. And that's our world, after all. We see it all around us. You have to be liberated from that. And it's wonderful to be free of it. I mean, of that I know. See, the personality crystal bundles, they all have an agenda. And in most cases, whether I like what they're doing or not, it's pretty much limited. You know? There's a lot of faces. You know. But here's where you come up against helplessness. You know? This is not to be messed with. This is something to see. This is an extraordinary force. Touching everything in our lives. Everything. Every being. Dominating the way in which life works. The whole material plane of this planet. It's thinking, not self-mind. Here it is. You know, this is what I want. This is what I need. This is where I have to go. This is who I have to do it with. All of these things. It's all about money, honey. And it is. So the question of life, the question of the mother with the child, is that guy going to be a deadbeat or is he going to make a decent living, you know? Big question. What to expect entering into this bargain with someone, you know? It's in everything. It's the source of every divorce, one way or another, you know. The failed expectations, the crushed identifications, the romance blown to hell, because money's in all of it. Yeah. So, you know, I have wonderful calendars from India of Lakshmi looking very sweet and wonderful. One of these delicious four-armed goddesses that always has plenty. I like the four arms, by the way. I think it's very suitable to this particular face. And it's interesting because it is one of the goddesses whose name can be found attached to just about everything. You know, the wealth of the land, the wealth of the people, the wealth of the, you know, it's always there. And yes, indeed, this is a force to really acknowledge. You know, this is the underlying theme. Yeah, it does in a sense alone. It's the underlying theme of, you know, this is what we're here for. We're not here to fight against, you know, the flow of the material plane. We cannot escape it. And that everything as human beings that we're going to manifest in this life is manifested within the context of the material. I mean, I know that. If human design didn't make money, you know, 15 or 17 years ago when I actually started professionally, it wouldn't have existed. I mean, it wouldn't have survived. You know, I didn't have any money. You know, I started human design by doing readings. I mean, you know, if it hadn't made money, it just wouldn't have made it. This is our world. You know, and now, how wonderful it is. You have resources and you can provide all kinds of wonderful things and methodologies and sources and products and blah, blah, blah. But it's all material. it's all built on money. I remember years ago, one of these crazy people who met human design said to me, but you got it for free, one of those. And I thought, oh man, you don't live in the world, I mean, everything about life is material work. I mean, it is. I mean, what I do every day, I know that it has its own uniqueness, but nonetheless, it is a job. I do my material work so I can look after my family and look after my business and all of these things. And this is life. It's just not to be caught in the mental delusion, the not self and its sicknesses, because we deserve better than that. And we do have bodies that will treat us well if we let them. Anyway, fun to share that with you. Sorry for the interruptions, but what to do? Life is full of surprises. And all of you take care. And until our next morning together, bye for now.